final today. A Glasgow Speedway legend who did the unthinkable and moved across the country to Edinburgh. He started his career at Glasgow but raced for Bellevue before returning to Glasgow 7 years ago. He moved 2 years later to Middlesbrough and in 1992 became a full-time Edinburgh asset. Just one British final before. In red, that's Kenny McKenna. He'll be going from the outside, and on the inside is Gary Stead in yellow and black. An important heat for these two lads, and they're really going to battle here because it's mighty important for both of them. A qualification place at issue, 4 laps of top speedway, a match race. Gary Stead on the inside, Kenny McKenna on the outside. McKenna's the man in red, the tapes are about to go up. On they go and away to the first bend, and it's McKenna on the outside, he slides wide. Coming through on the inside, Gary Stead, wheel for wheel down the back straight. Something of a match race this. Stead gets the drop on the bend. McKenna goes wide. The advantage there is to Gary Stead. Peter Collins alongside me. Stead looks to have this in the bag.
Yeah, they were side by side on that first lap there, and unfortunately Kenny McKenna was on the outside and got pushed wide as they started in the third turn. And Stead seems to be clear now.
Yes, Gary Stead is wheel perfect here. Now he's got the space and the time. He's opening him up now, a 15-metre gap ahead of the disappointed Kenny McKenna from Edinburgh. But Gary Stead is certainly going to bring about the cheers of the Bradford fans with a lap to go. He has the Bradford Dukes race jacket on. He's going to win this with ease, and Gary Stead is going to be the man who'll go through and wear the number 12 race jacket with his first appearance in Heat 3. There's the checkered flag, the win for Gary Stead. Bad luck, Kenny McKenna. McKenna will now be the meeting reserve for the rest of the meeting, but Gary Stead certainly showed form there, and it may well be that the rehearsal on the track has done him advantage. Here we go then for heat number 1. The action proper now starts thick and fast. That's Martin Dixon, the 33-year-old Long Eaton rider who makes his British final debut after 18 years in the sport. He started his career with Middlesbrough. He's since ridden for Halifax, Kings Lynn, back to Middlesbrough, and then Newcastle. He's in his 4th season now with Long Eaton. That's Martin Dixon in red. The blue helmet colours, the Eastbourne rider Dean Barker, a 24-year-old who makes his 3rd British final appearance today. He's also ridden for Cradley and Oxford since starting his career as a junior at Eastbourne. An England regular, he rattled up 8 points from his first 3 rides here last year. In blue, that's Dean Barker. In white is Gary Havelock, a 26-year-old from Bradford who hails from Teesside. He won the world title in Rocklab 3 years ago. He's won the British title twice. He's already safely in this year's Grand Prix. Races at Rocklab in 3 weeks' time. In the yellow and black helmet colours is Scott Robson, the 23-year-old from Middlesbrough who's taking part in his first ever British final. He started his career with Berwick in 87, remained at Berrington Lock until a move to Newcastle in 92. He moved to Middlesbrough this season. His younger brother Stuart rides here. A bit of track advice there perhaps. So there's the lineup. In red, Martin Dixon. In blue, Dean Barker. Gary Havelock in white on the outside. Scott Robson in yellow and black. That's heat number 1, and here we go now. Tight into the first bend. Gary Havelock there battling with Dean Barker. Barker on the inside, Havelock on the outside as they go into the top bend. Havelock goes wide. Barker hugs it on the inside. Havelock gets the advantage. Gary Havelock, the former world champion who doesn't need to qualify for this afternoon. He's there for honour and glory. Gary Havelock in white out front. Dean Barker in 2nd place in blue. Scott Robson's back in 3rd place. Bringing up the rear. Martin Dixon now in 3rd and Scott Robson at the back. Gary Havelock from Dean Barker, from Martin Dixon, from Scott Robson with just over a lap to go. This, Peter Collins, is easy for Gary Havelock.
Yeah, I think it must be nice actually riding in a British final without too much pressure on you, because he's not actually thinking of qualification and he can just go out there and ride to the best that he can, and I'm sure he's going to look very, very good by the end of the meeting.
There we are then. Gary Havelock does a wheelie across the line ahead of Dean Barker. Martin Dixon is in 3rd and Scott Robson, outclassed somewhat, tailed off at the rear.
Yeah, it was good, you know. I made a good start, I lifted a bit towards the corner. And Dean got a good run on the inside, but I managed to keep him ahead, so it was good.
What's the track like?
Slick.
Now for heat number 2. Number 5 in the red helmet colour, Neil Collins, a 33-year-old member of the Collins Speedway dynasty, one of whom's right next to me. It's Neil's 8th British final. He launched his career at Ellesmere Port 17 years ago and first joined Sheffield back in 1979. He spent the last 2 seasons with Long Eaton, but is now back at Sheffield for his 3rd spell with the club. In red, that's Neil Collins. In the blue helmet colour, and wearing number 7, Martin Dugard, the 25-year-old Eastbourne captain, who takes part in his 7th British final this afternoon. 2 years ago, he won the overseas title, but he suffered ill fortune in World Championship rounds and made just 1 World Final appearance. Current England regular, he started at Eastbourne back in '85. Martin Dugard in blue. In the white helmet colours is British champion Andy Smith. Twice in succession he's won the title, a Coventry rider on his home track in his 11th British final this afternoon and seeking a hat-trick and a record. In white, that's Andy Smith. Simon Cross in the yellow and black helmet colours is a 29-year-old from Cradley who's racing in his 7th British final today. A back injury 4 years ago in the World Long Track final saw him struggle somewhat. He announced his retirement 2 years ago, but he's back in action now. He's been at Cradley for 13 years. That's Simon Cross in yellow and black. So there we are at the tapes. There's the lineup on the inside. That's Neil Collins. Next to him, Martin Dugard, and away they go. Dugard's on the inside and going to make it, but to the apex, Andy Smith on his home track. Going wide is Simon Cross. Dugard comes through on the inside. At the back, Simon Cross comes through as well, leaving Simon Cross in the end at the back. It's Neil Collins into 3rd place, but out front in white, that is Andy Smith, looking for a hat-trick of British Championships here on his home track, pursued by Martin Dugard. Peter Collins, it's looking good for Andy Smith.
It is. It's a great way to start your first ride, actually, in defence. He's looking very good. He's looking very sharp. He made a nice start again from that gate 3, but he's coming under a bit of pressure there from Martin Dugard. He really needs to be pulling away Smith, really, to sort of have any sort of force for the rest of the meeting. But I think he's got this one in the bag.
Yes, Andy Smith takes the yellow and black flag with 1 lap to go, pursued by Dugard, Neil Collins and Simon Cross, disappointingly right at the back. But this is going to belong to the British champion in white. That is Andy Smith. He takes that to head to Martin Dugard. And back in 3rd place is Neil Collins. So Andy Smith, 1 notch on his stick, of course, for this British title, which could make it 3 in a row. An excellent ride by Andy Smith on his home track, taking that heat with ease.
What the crowd expected, really, Andy.
Well, hopefully it's going to carry on that way.
So, heat number 3, the rider in red is David Norris, a 22-year-old who's riding for Reading this season on loan from Eastbourne, where he learned his Speedway. As a 16-year-old, he moved to Ipswich for 2 seasons before returning to Eastbourne. Current regulations meant he missed out on the Eastbourne team this season. He's an England regular as well for test matches. David Norris in the red helmet colours. Chris Louis, wearing the number 11 race jacket in the blue helmet colours, is the 25-year-old son of Ipswich promoter and England team manager John Louis. Chris is in his 6th British final today. He's already qualified for the Grand Prix this year. He started his professional career at Hackney and was a World Junior Champion in 1990. He finished 3rd himself in the World Final 2 years ago in Pocking. In blue, that's Chris Louis. In the white helmet colours, already at the start line, is Paul Hurry, a 20-year-old from Marina, Essex, who's in his 2nd British final. Last year, he won the British Under-21 title. He's a grass track expert who joined Arena Essex 4 years ago. He spent 2 years on loan at Peterborough before returning to Arena Essex last season. And Gary Stead is the man in the yellow and black helmet colours. We've already seen him winning in that ride-off for the disputed place in the number 12 race jacket. A 23-year-old from Bradford. This is now his 1st British final. That's Gary Stead in yellow and black. So on the inside, that's David Norris. Next to him in blue, Chris Louis, slightly back from the tapes. In gate number 3, it's Paul Hurry. On the outside is Gary Stead. Stead's already been out on this track. The starting marshal about to move away, having problems getting the riders up to tape, but in a moment they will be away. The first bend so vital. David Norris away on the inside, hugs that bend and gets away in front. Chris Louis going round the outside, pursues him in blue, showing speed with that Jawa engine below him. Chris Louis, a Jawa Works rider, but David Norris on his GM is out front, and David Norris is leading this comfortably. Back in third place is Paul Hurry, Gary Stead at the back. But at the moment it's David Norris showing speed and showing track craft. Peter Collins, young Norris, looking good.
He's looking very good, he is, but Chris Lewis putting him under quite a lot of pressure. Lewis seems to be riding all over the track to find a way around the outside of Norris, and he really isn't letting him get away.
For my money, it looks as if Norris has a little bit in reserve, having time to look round there and see where Chris Louis is, and holding on to him as they go into the final lap. It's Norris, it's Louis. Gary Stead has come through into third place. Problems at the back for Paul Hurry, with his motor certainly sounding sick as he looks down towards it, but no doubt about the winner here as they come up to take the checkered flag. That's David Norris from Reading, Chris Louis from Ipswich, he's in second place, and Gary Stead from Bradford brings up the third place position to take 1 point, and tailed off disappointingly at the rear Paul Hurry from Arena Essex. But no doubt about the winner, David Norris. Good track craft, good skill, good speed. Peter Collins, he did well.
He did. David Norris has really improved this year. He's definitely going in the right direction. He makes a lovely start there, really, on the inside, and pushes Chris Louis quite wide on the first turn. And Louis really done well to get back into second place here, because he gets pushed pretty close towards the fence, but he's having trouble. He seems to be all over the place, Chris Louis, as he's trying to find a way around Norris. And on these first two laps, he actually doesn't let Norris get away, but I think Norris realises he's there, and Louis trying outside, then back to the inside. But Norris goes clear. That was a nice win.
So here we are for heat number 4 with Joe Screen in the red helmet colours, a 22-year-old from Chesterfield who rides for Bradford, a record transfer signing from Bellevue. His 5th British final appearance today, the 1993 World Under-21 champion. In 1993, he appeared in a staggering 5 World Finals, Under-21, Pairs, World Team Cup, Long Track and Individual. Runner-up last year in the British final, that's in red, Joe Screen. In the blue helmet colours is David Walsh. In the veteran stage now, the 31-year-old Glasgow rider, currently in his 13th season in the sport, during which time he's raced for 5 different clubs. The last 3 seasons have been at Glasgow, after spells with Berwick, Ellesmere Port, Sheffield and Cradley. In blue, that is David Walsh. In the white helmet colours and coming up to takes is Ben Howe, who clinched the British Under-21 title just a few days ago on his home track at Ipswich. He's 20 years old, he's in his 2nd British final. Born in Crawley, he first rode a bike as the Eastbourne Mascot, but joined Ipswich in 1991 and was runner-up for the British Under-21 title last season. Maybe a go, but he has already gone one better this year. That's Ben Howe in white. And there in yellow and black, the late replacement, 26-year-old Ray Morton. He takes the place of his clubmate David Mullett. He's kept out by Broken Angle. Morton's in his 2nd spell at Reading. He's also ridden for Wimbledon, but started his career 10 years ago at Kings Lynn. In yellow and black, that is Dave Morton. That's the lineup. This is heat number 4. Joe Screen on the inside, Dave Walsh next to him, Ben Howe in gate 3, and Dave Morton is on the outside in the yellow and black helmet colours as the motors roar. Up go the takes, and who makes it to the first bend? David Walsh is there, but going speedily round the outside is Ben Howe, and going through on the inside is Joe Screen. We've got a race on our hands here. Joe Screen from almost last to first as he streaks down the home straight. Joe Screen pursued by David Walsh. Ben Howe has gone right to the back and having trouble keeping his grip, but now going by Dave Morton at the rear. Some race we have here, but Peter Collins knows an awful lot about Joe Screen, and he's pretty fast here, Peter.
He is. I actually saw Joe then on the inside on gate 1. He was last to move from the gate. He made an atrocious start, to be perfectly honest, but the other riders on that first turn seemed to go very wide, and he had a very good run round the inside, but he's now got past them. He's just pulling away. He's really going well. He's got 100 yards in front.
Well, Joe Screen is certainly well out in front, and now Dave Walsh in 2nd place. Ben Howe back in 3rd, and Dave Morton at the rear. But this is all about Joe Screen. But there's the battle on the bend, and 2nd place is going to David Walsh ahead of Ben Howe. And really disappointing for Dave Morton, or Ray Morton rather, who's come through here and certainly done, or provided himself with a few problems.
Joe, going into that last lap, you were about 20 yards in front.
Yeah, I didn't make a good start. And if I went round the inside, you know, I've got a good chance of coming out either the first or the second one, and you know, it happened how well I wanted to.
Is the bike all right?
Yeah, the bike's going all right. It's just I should have made a better start than what I did. You know, it wasn't the hardest race I've got today, so I've got to improve on the starting thing.
So, with everybody having had one ride, Gary Havelock, Andy Smith, David Norris and Joe Screen, all with heat victories to their name, have 3 points. Martin Dugard, Dean Barker, Chris Louis and David Walsh, all with second places, have 2 points each. Neil Collins, Martin Dixon, Gary Stead and Ben Howe, 1 point apiece from third places. Scott Robson, Simon Cross, Paul Hurry and Ray Morton have all failed to score. Everybody's had one ride, that's how it stands. Heat number 5, on the inside in the red helmet colour is late substitute Ray Morton from Reading Racers. Next to him in the vacant space in the blue helmet colours, we're waiting for Martin Dixon. Coming up now, Martin Dixon with a third place in his first outing. Ray Morton failed to score at the back. In gate number 3 in the white helmet colours, we have Neil Collins with just 1 race point so far from a third place. On the outside is Paul Hurry from Arena Essex. He failed to score in his first ride. Sad for this field in this heat, just 2 points between them from their first outings. They all need points. Ray Morton, Martin Dixon, Neil Collins and Paul Hurry from right to left. On the inside it's Ray Morton. Away we go, and this time Ray Morton is quicker on the inside, but going round the outside is Paul Hurry, who may well have changed a gear in the pits during the break, but coming through now on the inside and battling is Martin Dixon, as Ray Morton is taken wide, and now it's taken up at the front by Paul Hurry. Hurry ahead of Martin Dixon. Back in third place is Ray Morton, and in white at the back is Neil Collins. Peter, Paul Hurry is riding a different race this time from his first outing.
Yeah, I think he must have changed the gear or something. He looks a far different rider now than he did in his earlier heat.
So, way out front is Paul Hurry, and he doesn't look to be in too much trouble, pursued by Martin Dixon. Quite a battle at the back as Neil Collins tries to go round the outside of Ray Morton. But Morton holds him off, and in the last lap we are now with, in yellow and black, out front Paul Hurry, putting the battle in and putting a speed on the final turn. That is Martin Dixon, but it's held there by Paul Hurry. In second place, Martin Dixon. Back in third is Neil Collins, and at the back, Ray Morton in red. Away from the tapes then with Peter Collins, we can see that there Ray Morton made it well on the inside, but from then on it was all backwards for him, and coming round on the outside was Paul Hurry, who held it from there.
That's right, Hurry, he seems to be different altogether in this race, but I mean, he really does need the points after running the last in his first race. He's gone clear now of the other riders, and he does really look good at this stage. He's got 3 more rides to go, and he's got to amass some points, but he's certainly going in the right direction the way he's going now. He must have changed a gear or something on his bike.
In the last lap, well, he was out in front. Martin Dixon was in touch, and at the back, well, there was a second race going on between Ray Morton and Neil Collins, and Neil put the speed on in the final turn, but out front, well, it just stayed as it was, and Paul Hurry there, as Peter says, probably changed a gear. It allowed him to go quicker and certainly earned him 3 race points that time.
I don't suppose there's any real pressure on me at the moment because I've not done a lot this year so far. So I just come here really just to try and get as many points as I can. I didn't expect to win it. Maybe a rostrum place might be good, but I think dropping them points earlier on might have affected that, so away it goes.
Heat number 6, and that in blue is David Norris. So impressive with a heat victory first time out. David Norris in his first outing certainly finishing well in front of the speedy Chris Louis and showing his value in this meeting. David Norris is the rider in blue, the 22-year-old from Reading Racers, wearing the number 10 race jacket, and in this heat going from gate number 2 in the blue helmet colours, that's David Norris. Emerging from the pits, Andy Smith, a heat winner first time out as he looks towards his 3rd successive British title. Andy Smith finished in front of Martin Dugard first time out. Simon Cross and Neil Collins as well were in his wake. But Andy Smith on his home track has every chance here of making it a hat-trick of British titles. In this heat, David Norris providing the challenge as Smith looks to earn his 2nd heat victory. In yellow and black, that's Andy Smith. In gate number 2 in blue, we've already seen David Norris, but on the inside of him is Dave Walsh in red. And in gate number 3 in yellow and black, or in white rather, that's Dean Barker. So Dean Barker is in gate 3. There he is at the tapes, and Dean Barker finished second first time out. So we've got some heavy point scorers in this heat. David Walsh on the inside, David Norris next to him, Dean Barker in gate number 3, and the British champion Andy Smith is on the outside. Looking along the line, the nerve ends are fraying. It's so vital they make it to the first bend. Who's going to do it? Away on the inside in red is Dave Walsh, but tight on the bend is Dean Barker this time. Round the outside goes Andy Smith. The Coventry rider makes it to the top bend first. The local fans cheer because Andy Smith is out there again, ahead of Dean Barker in second place. David Norris is back in third, and at the back it's David Walsh. Home track advantage is telling here, Peter Collins.
Well, I think so, but I just saw Andy earlier on in the changing room, and he's actually lost 1.5 stone to before the season started. And he's certainly showing out on the track. He's going very, very quick. And that extra weight that he's lost seems to be making that difference, but I'm sure that he's very determined to try and win this for a third time, which would be a record.
Well, it certainly will be a record at the moment. All is going to queue because with 1 lap to go, Andy Smith leads ahead of, in second place, Dean Barker. Back in third is David Norris, and at the rear, that's David Walsh. But here in yellow and black, no doubt about the quality, no doubt about the local support. Andy Smith takes that in yellow and black, ahead of in white Dean Barker, and back in third place in blue, that's David Norris. But no doubt about the quality, and now maximum 6 points from 2 rides for this man, Andy Smith, who's won the last 2 British titles, and there's no doubt about who the fans here at Coventry are backing this afternoon as he waves to those very fans. And again told from the first bend, but it wasn't quite there that Andy Smith did it, as we see it with Peter Collins.
Yes, Andy made a very brave first turn there. You can see him running around the outside. As he's coming onto the straight, Dean Barker's almost clear, but Andy sees a small gap between Barker and the fence, and he goes through it very, very well. And I think to beat Dean Barker like this has been exceptional, because I know Dean Barker is one of the fastest riders out on the track this year, as he was last year. And I think that's a great feather in Andy's cap there.
Well, there was no doubt, once again, going into the last lap, who was going to win this one. Andy Smith knows the track like the back of his hand. Barker was in pursuit, albeit quickly, but the track craft told here, the local knowledge, Peter, and he certainly did it all the way to the line.
Yeah, Andy certainly knows his way around Coventry, and that's a great help. He must be feeling very good today.
Well, there he was, certainly feeling good with another 3 points, and that takes him to a maximum 6 from 2 outings. Right now we're underway with heat number 7, and coming out there is Joe Screen, so desperately fast in his first outing, heat number 4, when he left all 3 of David Walsh, Ben Howe and Ray Morton in his wake. Joe Screen looked a fast rider, and this is certainly going to be a battle for him. The Bradford rider is battling with his teammate, and his teammate is Gary Havelock in yellow and black. And Gary too won his first heat with ease, so there'll be no favours asked, and they don't expect any given in this one. Although Joe Screen, of course, needs to qualify for next year's Grand Prix Series. He was desperately disappointed to miss out this time, but Gary Havelock is the last British rider to be a world champion, and Gary Havelock is the man who's going to challenge him all the way here, where he goes from the outside in yellow and black. And Martin Dugard is going to pose a threat, because he's one of Britain's top riders. Martin Dugard in white is going from gate number 3, so it's going to be quite a race here. And on the inside in red is Chris Louis, already seeded through to the Grand Prix, and 2 years ago, right there on the rostrum in the World Final itself in Pocking. We have in this heat arguably Britain's top 4 riders, Peter Collins. This is going to be quite a race.
I'm sure it will be. With Havelock there being next world champion, Screen, who's been in these meetings so many times now, and this time he really did win something big. Martin Dugard's been around for a long time, and Chris Louis is under 21 world champion. This is going to be a great race.
Well, here we are, arguably the 4 top riders in British Speedway, line abreast at the tapes here in Coventry. This is the British final. Surely one of them is going to be the British champion if it's not going to be Andy Smith. The Coventry men may say Andy Smith on his home track, but here is riding talent in the extreme. This is heat number 7. Away we go from the tape. Havelock is fast from the outside, but on the inside Chris Louis goes through to hold it, but round the outside comes Joe Screen. Havelock's in pursuit. Havelock's right at the back, but going wide is Martin Dugard coming through. But now out front, Joe Screen ahead of Chris Louis, Martin Dugard and Gary Havelock. But Joe Screen once again knows what he's doing here, and Peter Collins, it doesn't look as if he's going to be passed.
Well, he had half a wheel on as he went into the first turn there. But Louis seems to be all over Screen at the moment. But if Screen can win this race, this will be a great advantage to him, because to see off such good opposition in one go like this will be really good. But I'm sure he saved his good start for this race. I certainly hope so.
Well, there we are, but coming through on the inside and challenging him is Chris Louis. But Screen goes wide and takes the grip provided by the dirt here at Brandon Stadium to surely take this one. In blue, Joe Screen takes the checkered flag. In second place, Chris Louis. Back in third is Martin Dugard. And surprisingly, at the back, that's Gary Havelock, the top of Britain's racing talent here in that one. And Joe Screen came out like the cream on top of the milk. A lovely wheelie from Joe Screen, acknowledges the support of his fans, but the start was so vital, and Joe Screen was right there. Peter.
Yeah, I'm sure Screen was very happy to get that race out of the way, but if you notice, he gets only half a wheel in front as he gets to the first turn, and it's all he needs there. He runs Havelock out very wide, puts Havelock really out of the race, but Chris Louis nips round on the inside, and he is a major threat to Joe Screen at this stage. Louis seems to be all over Screen as this race sort of progresses onto the first couple of laps, but I'm sure that Screen knows Louis is there. Now Louis again is trying all over the track really to sort of get some advantage over Screen, but Screen has a really quick line around the outside. If you just notice that quick look there from Screen as he noticed Chris Louis was sort of all over him around the inside, and Screen sort of really working hard to keep that bike going. He's looking for Louis all over the place because he knows he's there, but that was a great race.
Well, at that point he was in charge, and when he came into the last lap, well, he made it count even more, and there was nothing Chris Louis could do, with Joe Screen wide and picking up the grip, and from there on there was only one man going to win that. Martin Dugard trailing back in third place, 1 point for him, but none at all for Gary Havelock. The man of the moment though in this heat, that's Joe Screen.
Yeah, I made a very, very good start. You know, that's probably one of the best starts I've made this year. You know, I had 3 other really good guys there, and I don't know, I just made a good start, and I just led from the start, which was easy.
So on the inside, Scott Robson, Simon Cross in gate 2. Gate 3 is Gary Stead, and on the outside in yellow and black is Ben Howe. This is heat number 8. All desperately looking for points to make their mark on this British Championship title chase. Ben Howe goes round the outside and picks it up to take the lead ahead of Scott Robson on the inside. Quite a battle, and there's the view that we see from the back of Ben Howe's bike. And Ben Howe is on the outside, but now coming through on the inside, almost a cue on our camera is Scott Robson, and Ben Howe sets off in pursuit with Gary Stead in third place, moving forward now to leave Ben Howe back in third place, and at the rear it's Simon Cross. But at the moment out front, Scott Robson from Middlesbrough. In second place, Gary Stead, the qualifier from Bradford. Back in third is Ben Howe, and right at the back that's Simon Cross. This something of a procession here, and disappointment after the overtaking of the first lap. But now Scott Robson has it very much his own way, Peter Collins.
Yeah, Robson had the inside start there, and he just kept plugging away on that first lap, and he ended up taking the lead. It's sad to see Simon Cross there at the back, because Simon's been going very, very well this year, but there's no taking anything away from Robson. That was a great win.
So Scott Robson taking it in red ahead of, in white, Gary Stead, and in third place Ben Howe in yellow and black. And as Peter says, real disappointment for the talented Simon Cross. So with everybody having had 2 rides after 8 heats, Andy Smith and Joe Screen each had 6 points, 2 wins from 2 outings. David Norris, Dean Barker, Chris Louis all have 4. Gary Stead, Paul Hurry, Scott Robson, Martin Dugard and Gary Havelock, along with Martin Dixon, are all on 3. David Walsh on 2, Ben Howe on 2, Neil Collins on 2, Ray Morton and Simon Cross have failed to score. So heat number 9, and here's Andy Smith once again, the Coventry rider, looking for race win number 3 out of 3 to take him on his way to a hat-trick of British titles if he can do it, having won it for the last 2 years. In superb form so far this afternoon, in red, number 6, Andy Smith. In yellow and black is Chris Louis, already qualified for the Grand Prix, of course on the rostrum of the World Final himself just 2 years ago. He won't give in easily in this one, and certainly in his last outing, he looked in much better form. In yellow, Chris Louis. In gate number 2 is Ben Howe with the camera on the back of his bike, the British Under-21 champion from Ipswich. And there's the view from that camera as we wait for the remaining rider in white, Martin Dixon. He's there. Now we have all 4. On the inside in red, Andy Smith, looking for race win number 3 in a row. Next to him is Ben Howe with the camera on the back of his machine. In the white helmet colours, Martin Dixon in gate 3. And on the outside in yellow and black, that's Chris Louis. This is the lineup. This is heat number 9. Peter Collins is alongside me. Peter, Chris Louis needs this from the outside. How tough is he going to make the first bend first from there?
Well, it looks pretty interesting because we've just had a track grade and most of the dirt has been brought back from the outside to the inside, and of course Andy Smith is off the inside start, so it's going to be very interesting when they get to this first corner.
You're not suggesting the Coventry staff are helping their man by any chance?
Well, it needs grading after heat 8 and that's when it was done. It's just the look of the draw, I suppose.
Here we go then. This is heat number 9. Andy Smith from the inside, Chris Louis from the outside. Smith holds it, but Ben Howe creeps through. There goes Smith once again, picking it up from the bend. And Andy Smith, the Coventry rider, is out front yet again, but Chris Louis is not giving in. Look for action here, because Chris Louis is battling. Andy Smith goes wide, but retains control. Chris Louis comes again. They're really battling, but that little man in red, Andy Smith, has the fighting qualities. He has the track knowledge. It's his home track, ahead of Chris Louis. At the back, there's a second race going on between Martin Dixon and Ben Howe. But now Andy Smith is out there. This is quite a race, Peter.
Well, it certainly is. Again, Chris Louis is all over Andy Smith. Chris Louis had 2 second places already, and I don't think he likes second place by the way he's going. But whether he's going to pass Andy, I just don't know. But he's certainly got some speed.
Well, there comes Chris Louis with that speed, but it's probably not going to be enough as Andy Smith takes that one ahead of Chris Louis, with Martin Dixon back in 3rd place. And there we saw Andy Smith take himself to a maximum 9 points out of 9 so far, and he must be favourite once again to take that British title. From the start it was vital. The dirt was on the inside, Peter Collins.
It was, Tony, on the first corner. I mean, that was a good start from Andy, but the track's completely changed for this race. Andy sort of uses that dirt, but then realises that the rider in blue has come up the inside very, very quickly, and he had to dispose of him first. But then Chris Louis also goes past Andy. But as you can see now, the outside, right on the very outside, there's a lot of dirt out there because Andy gets pushed out onto that dirt. You actually think that he's gone too wide, but he lifts and gets a load of grip again, gets a load more grip and goes again past Chris Louis. I mean, that was very, very good.
You have the impression, Peter, that Andy Smith knew exactly where every shovelful of dirt was on this track.
It seemed that way to me. I mean, there were 2 distinct lines there on the track. The inside where the tractor had pulled all the dirt from, and still on the outside where there seems to be a good build-up of nice damp dirt that's still got loads of grip in it. And Andy used it on every occasion.
And Chris Louis, even on the last lap, it looked as if he might make inroads on that final bend, but then Andy went away, took the checkered flag, and that made it 3 in a row for the young man from Coventry. Heat number 10, and there's Joe Screen. A vitally important heat for him because he has 2 race wins from 2 rides. and Andy Smith, who's already had 3, has a maximum. Joe can tie it up with him with a heat victory here, and with the speed he's shown, well, who's going to question his ability to do just that? There's Joe Screen. In the red helmet colours is Gary Stead. 4 points to his name. The man who qualified here this afternoon, the Bradford rider, who qualified with a ride-off. That is Neil Collins. Just 2 points so far. He goes from gate number 2, and he's going to struggle to make the qualification stage of 6 men going through. On the outside is Dean Barker with 4 points to his name, earlier described by Peter Collins as one of the country's quickest riders. He's going to have to be quick here to catch Joe Screen, who's right next to him. We're going to watch those two from the outside as the tapes go up, and once again Joe Screen is there to the apex of the bend. Joe Screen is in front. He's pursued by Dean Barker on the outside. Coming through on the inside, Gary Stead's in pursuit, and at the back it's Neil Collins, but Peter Collins. Joe Screen is there again.
That was a nice first corner from Joe. See how he's using that dirt now round the outside. He seems to be riding a completely different line really to everybody else, and he seems to be now going away clear. And if he's going to win this British Championship, he's certainly got to win this race. The way Andy Smith's going, he can't afford to drop any points whatsoever.
Well, it's going to be quite something when they meet, but that's a while yet. There's Joe Screen, and there with just over a lap to go, there's nobody challenging him in this one. Dean Barker's back in second place. He too is looking backwards to Gary Stead, and tailed off at the back is Neil Collins. But Joe Screen is fast, he's furious, he's wheel perfect, and there once again is Joe Screen to take the checkered flag ahead of Dean Barker and Gary Stead. So a great effort from Joe Screen. 3 wins in a row for him, so now it's dead level at the top. Joe Screen with another wheelie to salute the fans, even with 1 foot off the bike, showing the true quality and showing why he's almost been wedded to a motorcycle since very early years. And here we can see it from the tapes. Peter Collins' favourite rider, Joe Screen, once again.
Well, I think Joe's very, very slow from the start, but he seems to gain momentum as he gets going towards the corner. And when he gets to the corner, he's just about clear, as he's done in each race, and then he just pulls away. I think he's running with a very, very high gear on the bike. That's all the symptoms of a high gear, but once he gets going, he's extremely fast. It's whether he's got enough speed from the start when he comes up against Andy Smith.
So heat number 11, there's Gary Havelock, the former world champion, already qualified for the Grand Prix. So it's all for honour and glory this afternoon, and he's a little bit behind schedule. He needs a heat win here. 3 points so far. Gary Havelock, a win and a last place to date. In the blue helmet colours, we have Paul Hurry with 3 points to his name so far. He goes from gate number 2. The young man from Arena Essex, who's a grass track expert. He's waiting for the man coming up on the inside in the red helmet colours and just arriving at tapes, the veteran Simon Cross, who has yet to score his first point. Disappointment for the man from Cradley. And tucked up on the outside, David Walsh with 2 points to his name so far. And David wears the yellow and black helmet colours to go from gate number 4. Tapes to go up, but there they do as Gary Havelock makes it quickly to the apex of the bend to hold the lead. The grip on the outside being collected by David Walsh, who picks up speed, but Simon Cross goes through on the inside and he needs to pick up points here. But Gary Havelock out front, so disappointed in his last ride. No such disappointment this time. Havelock has whichever part of the track he wishes to use at his disposal as he's pursued on the inside by Simon Cross. And back in third place in yellow and black and going wide is David Walsh. Right at the back in blue is Paul Hurry, but there is Gary Havelock with a lap and a half to go. It's Havelock from Cross, from Walsh, and Hurry is tailed off. As they go into the last lap, the former world champion is showing speed here that perhaps he lacked last time out. But Gary Havelock going wide down the back straight to come in and take the checkered flag surely here with some comfort in this heat number 11 as Gary Havelock from Bradford, he wins that. In second place Simon Cross, and David Walsh is third. Disappointment for Paul Hurry. The first points of the afternoon for Simon Cross, and Gary Havelock moves on to 6 from 3 rides. Heat number 12 has Ray Morton on the inside. He's failed to score so far after coming into the meeting late. Scott Robson, a surprise in his last outing. He's in blue. He's in gate number 2. David Norris, with 4 points from 2 rides so far, is in gate number 3. And the Eastbourne captain, Martin Dugard, with just 3 to his name to date, he goes in yellow and black from the outside. Dugard has work to do here to qualify. Many would have thought he was an automatic one to do so. This is heat number 12. Away from the inside and very fast was Ray Morton, who seemed to get a drop on the tape there. No comment from the referee at all, but round the outside goes David Norris, pursued by Martin Dugard. And the red flags are out, as I thought. Something went wrong with the tapes there. Maybe we can have a look at that one in slow motion as how the tapes went up, because certainly Ray Morton got a flyer. Let's see what happened at the start. Here we are. A real jump from Ray Morton, rather like a horse going over Beecher's Brook there, and he got the jump on everybody. The referee spotted it, and now we're going to have to start it all over again, and it will be once again Ray Morton from the inside, Scott Robson, David Norris and Martin Dugard to have a go once again. Well, we have a restart then of heat number 12. Referee Barry Richardson, very sharp to see that, and certainly something unfair from Ray Morton, but let's see what happens now here as they have another go to get away from the tapes for heat number 12. And I don't think somehow that Ray Morton will get away quite so quickly this time. A much better start this time, and it's Martin Dugard from the outside that goes round the field to take the lead down the back straight. It was a fair start, and for my money, probably the fastest rider is now the man up front, Peter Collins. It counted where it mattered.
It certainly did, yeah. It's a bit unfortunate that race was stopped for David Norris when he was in front, because I think he was a bit annoyed about that, but he's back up to second now as he's gone away from Ray Morton, and he's now got Dugard in his sights.
Yes, well, there's Martin Dugard out front ahead of David Norris, both teammates at Eastbourne last year. Norris riding for Reading now, Dugard the captain of Eastbourne, and Dugard needs the points here if he's going to have a chance of qualifying. With just over a lap to go, it's Dugard, Norris, Morton, and at the back, Scott Robson as we go into the last lap. This one now a procession, because it's just as it was when they pulled out of the first bend. Martin Dugard having gone round the outside to take all 3 points, as here we go on the checkered flag. It's Martin Dugard from David Norris back in 3rd place. That's Ray Morton, and it was absolutely vital that the fairer start with no drop from the inside. They all started level. David Norris is having words with the referee because he was upset. He was in the lead when the referee stopped the first attempt, but now the 3 points to Martin Dugard.
You're obviously annoyed then.
Well, annoyed. What's the bloke's problem, you know what I mean? I didn't even make a good start, but I managed to get round him on the track, which is not even suited for kids' bicycles. It's just slick. So I make a pass, first all meeting, so the referee stops it. I mean, what's on? He stopped it because the bloke out of gate 1 made a good track. You know, not that he cheated or nothing, you know, everyone's dead still. And just because I was in the lead, the ref stopped it. I mean, you got a problem with me or something? I don't know.
So with everybody having had 3 outings, it's level at the top with Andy Smith and Joe Screen disputing the British title, each with 9 points. A clutch of riders on 6. Dean Barker, Gary Havelock, Chris Louis, Martin Dugard and David Norris all on 6. Gary Stead has 4 alongside Martin Dugard. Paul Hurry has 3 with Scott Robson and David Walsh. Ben Howes on 2 alongside Neil Collins and Simon Cross. And Ray Morton has 1. So heat number 13 now gets underway after all the riders have had a break, and of course the anticipation waiting for the direct confrontation between Joe Screen and Andy Smith is vital. But here on the inside is Martin Dugard, desperately keen to qualify for the next stage of the Grand Prix. He's on 6 points. In blue next to him, Gary Stead on 4. David Walsh has 3 points in gate number 3 in the white helmet colours. On the outside in yellow and black, that's Martin Dixon. That's the lineup. Martin Dixon there with 4 points to his name. And let's see them at the line. Martin Dugard surely the favourite for this one, but we'll have to wait and see as the tapes go up, and Martin Dugard on the inside picks it up and heads them to the apex of the corner. On the inside and coming through is David Walsh in the white helmet colours, but taking a bite at the back is Martin Dixon as Gary Stead goes wide, but no such problems for Martin Dugard out front, and this heat victory might be enough to take him towards qualification for the next stage of the Grand Prix. It's Martin Dugard out front and a battle between all three at the back with 2 laps gone. 3 at the back are really fighting at the moment, with the man in front of that bunch is Martin Dixon. Gary Stead is pursuing him, and right at the back is David Walsh. Surely, though, none of those are really going to qualify with a lap to go. Martin Dugard, the Eastbourne captain, is surely going to win this one. Martin Dugard way out front, and to be fair, the other 3 were former second division riders. Martin Dugard, certainly unlucky in some World Championship rounds, has time to look back and take the checkered flag for this heat 13 to Martin Dugard, second place to Martin Dixon, and third to Gary Stead. But all the way, virtually from the start, from the inside, from the apex of the first bend, was Martin Dugard. There we are, the appetite for Dean Barker on the inside. You can just see the anticipation of those riders at the tapes as they wait for the referee to pull the lever and send them away, as he does right now. Chris Louis lifts on the outside, loses ground, and Dean Barker it is that takes it up. But on the inside of Barker, Simon Cross is pushing him all the way. Chris Louis coming round the outside now to move into second place behind Dean Barker. A battle though, as once again Simon Cross gets in his way and puts Louis back to third. Then Barker's out front, and this heat victory could take the Eastbourne rider towards qualification for the overseas final, the next stage of the Grand Prix elimination. Earlier, Peter Collins said Dean Barker was fast. He's looking fast in this one, Peter.
He's looking very quick, Tony. If you notice as well, though, he's got the wrong helmet colour on. He's actually got a yellow on, and he should have a red on. I noticed that when he left the starting gate. So we've actually got 2 riders in yellow here.
Chris Louis moving into second place, the one who's supposed to be wearing the yellow helmet colour, but Dean Barker is out front. Barker is out front by a considerable distance, is going to bag 3 race points here to take his total to 9. Chris Louis takes second place, he goes on to 8. Back in third is Simon Cross, 1 race point for him, but from the moment he made it from the gate, Dean Barker, the Eastbourne rider there, supposedly with a red helmet colour on, number 2, certainly made it from the start and held it all the way. So, heat number 15. There in the red helmet colours on the inside, that's Ben Howe. They've removed the camera from the back of his machine, and on the outside is Neil Collins in yellow and black. Here we go, this is heat 15, and away goes Gary Havelock to the apex of the bend, but at the back is Neil Collins taking a perler into the fence. The red flags are out. Neil Collins taking a perler into the fence. Let's hope he's all right, but he looks to be in some pain, does Neil Collins, down by the fence there. He was taken wide. We cannot see for the moment who the referee has excluded, but no doubt we'll find that out in a moment, and we'll just have to wait and see. But let's watch it from the start with Peter Collins, his younger brother, of course, Neil is. Peter, what went wrong here?
That's right, Neil's there on gate 4, and he almost makes the start actually, but as he gets to the corner, he's just in the wrong place. He gets hit by the rider in white, and down he goes. He slides off into the fence. I didn't really feel that he'd hit it particularly hard, but looking on the monitor there, I think he did. He seemed to be in quite a bit of pain when he was down, but let's just hope he's okay.
So as the crowd wait here, we hear from referee Barry Richardson that all 4 riders will be back in. Let's hope that Neil and his machine are okay. He took quite a buffeting, but once again we'll see all 4 riders at the start if Neil Collins makes it. So we're at the tapes for the start of heat 15, the restart of heat 15 after Neil Collins had taken a perler, but he's certainly there, and there's Neil Collins feeling his elbow, which is what appeared to hit the fence, so maybe Neil won't quite have the appetite for going into that first bend quite so hard this time. But there we are then, waiting for Ben Howe to come up on the inside. Next to him's Gary Havelock in blue, casually looking across. In gate 3 it's David Norris. On the outside is Neil Collins. That's the lineup. This is the restart of heat 15. Gary Havelock Havelock once again first into the bend. Neil Collins follows him round the outside and picks up speed to come out of the bend with David Norris back in third place. No problems for Ben Howe. He's not going to contest this. Something has gone wrong with his machine. He's left at the back, which now leaves 3 men racing. 2 really in the wake of Gary Havelock. Havelock is fast here. Neil Collins in second place. David Norris battling in third and struggling somewhat there. But out front, there is Gary Havelock. And Gary Havelock, with these 3 points, will take him on to 9. In second place is Neil Collins, and back in third is David Norris, with Ben Howe having retired. With just over a lap to go, if Gary Havelock had shown this form earlier on, Peter, then he would have been in contention as well.
Well, absolutely, Tony. It was just that real one bad ride that Gary had, but unfortunately it was at his expense after Joe Screen gave him a bit of a push in that earlier race.
But in this one, no such problem. There is Gary Havelock taking the checkered flag as he goes across the line ahead of Neil Collins. Disappointment for David Norris, who now with 7 points is going to struggle to qualify there. But certainly Gary Havelock moving on to 9 from 4 rides. He's already qualified for the Grand Prix. May have enough if he wins his next heat to get a place on the rostrum, but certainly impressive in winning that one. This with Andy Smith and Joe Screen in direct opposition, and anticipation in the pits for them both, surely.
Hopefully I'm going to go out there and win it.
Home field advantage, has that been good for you the last few years?
Not really, because we don't get that many meetings on it at the beginning of the season. We've had a lot of rain off. I don't think it's no advantage.
And what about Screen? Do you think he's got the capabilities of beating you?
No.
Andy said you haven't got a chance.
So no, I think there's more pressure on him retaining it 3 times. You know, I'm just happy. You know, I've qualified now, and if I win it, it'll be a good night tonight.
What's been the best thing about the day so far?
The weather.
So heat 16 now provides what will surely be the decisive heat for this British title. There is Joe Screen in yellow and black. 3 heat victories. 3 really fast performances so far, and he has never been headed here this afternoon. Joe Screen goes from the outside here in yellow and black. The 22-year-old from Chesterfield who rides for Bradford, and he was the 1993 World Under-21 champion, and he's going to go for it here surely in this one from the outside. The opposition, though, provided by Andy Smith. 3 wins out of 3 for him, the Coventry rider who's won the British title for the last 2 years. This is his 11th British final here this afternoon, and for the 28-year-old, if he wins this heat, surely he could be on his way to becoming the first man to do a hat-trick of British title successes, 3 successive years, 3 successive wins it would be. But we know here what he's got to contend with, a very fast Joe Screen. On the inside in the red helmet colours is Paul Hurry, there with 3 points to his name so far. He goes from gate number 1, perhaps a spoiler in this one. And Scott Robson, the Middlesbrough rider, is in the white helmet colour, and he goes from gate number 3. Surely this is going to be a race between Joe Screen on the outside there in the yellow helmet colour and Andy Smith going from gate number 2 in the blue. The Coventry fans will be backing Andy Smith, but much of the stadium will surely be shouting that Joe Screen, who many feel should have been in the Grand Prix anyway for this year. So as they line up at the tape, the start's going to be vital. Andy Smith's away on the inside. Joe Screen first to the bend, tries to shut the door. Smith holds him off. Joe Screen picks up speed. They're really racing in this one, but there goes Andy Smith. Joe Screen has to show all his track craft if he's going to make headway here. Screen's on the inside and does it surely. No, Smith holds him tight. Smith's now on the outside and Screen on the inside, and Smith pulls away down the back straight. Peter Collins, Joe's got a bit to do.
He certainly has. Andy's looking very, very quick. That extra weight is lost into making all the difference, and he seems to be pulling away now from Joe. But Joe's trying everything he knows, and I know he won't give up at all.
A lap and a half to go. Andy Smith's out front. Could this be the key to a hat-trick of British title successes? Joe Screen's in pursuit. Andy Smith from Joe Screen. Screen's going wide. Can he pick up the speed? Smith holds on. Screen keeps battling. into the final bend. Smith still out front. Here he goes for race victory number 4. Andy Smith wins it. He clenches a fist. Joe Screen in second place. The Coventry crowd go wild as Andy Smith makes that 4 in a way to make it 12 points, and the applause is for Andy Smith. One more heat victory and he's made a hat-trick of British title successes, but that will not be easy. I think he has yet to meet Gary Havelock. It was vital though at the start as we see Andy Smith coming round there, and let's see what happened from the tapes as they pulled away. Peter.
Yeah, all credit to Andy there. I mean, the pressure was really on him, but he comes away from that blue start, the number 2 start, and pushes Joe a bit there on the first turn. Now it's a real race down that back straight as they go towards the top bend, but Joe Screen's going to really try everything to go past Andy, but Andy must be riding with mirrors because he knows that Joe's going to be trying on the inside, the outside, wherever. But Andy's got his track knowledge of Coventry, and I know that he's going to do his best to stop Joe getting by, but I know that he thinks he's got a tiger on his tail. But on the second lap, Andy seems to pull away here slightly, and Joe seems a little bit sluggish out of the corners. Perhaps he's a little bit overgeared or something, but Andy's really got a bit of an advantage with his weight.
And into the last lap, the battle was still joined. Perhaps Joe Screen felt he had a chance there as he came out of that bend, but when Andy Smith held on the inside, Peter, well, then it was all over. Joe had too much to do.
Yeah, that's right. Joe's a bit bigger lad, and he's pulling about 11 stones to Andy's 9.5, and I think that's the thing that made the difference in the end.
So everybody now has one ride to go, and favourite for that British title for the 3rd year in a row is Coventry's Andy Smith, who has a maximum 12 points. Joe Screen, beaten in heat 16 by Smith, has 11. All is not lost. On 9 points we have Dean Barker, Gary Havelock and Martin Dugard. Chris Louis has 8. David Norris is on 7. Martin Dixon on 6. Gary Stead has 5. Neil Collins and Paul Hurry have 4 apiece. Scott Robson, David Walsh and Simon Cross are on 3. Ben Howe has 2 and Ray Morton just 1. That's the lineup, heat 17. On the inside, Martin Dixon. Next to him in blue, Simon Cross. The white helmet colours, the very fast Joe Screen. On the outside is David Norris as the starting marshal walks away. We await the tapes going up they go, and Joe Screen is into the first bend in front, showing the speed we expected. He will probably stay there. In his tracks go David Norris and Martin Dixon, but Joe Screen in a class of his own surely in this one, as Martin Dixon moves into second place to relegate David Norris back to 3rd, and Joe Screen once again out front, and with every bend, with every bit of shale, his lead is increasing here on Martin Dixon and David Norris. Trailing in their wake is Simon Cross. His disappointment continues, but here Peter Collins, Joe Screen, not without hope still of that British title.
Yeah, this is one race he's really got to win if he's got to keep his British Championship hopes alive, but Martin Dixon behind him desperately needs the points as well.
Well, Joe Screen is certainly going to qualify for the overseas final. He's certainly going to get a place on the rostrum here for the British title, and if Andy Smith doesn't win the next heat, Joe Screen will face at least a ride-off. So there's Joe Screen taking the checkered flag ahead of Martin Dixon. In 3rd place, David Norris, and bringing up the rear in blue, Simon Cross. Joe Screen doing the wheelie and showing once again those victory celebrations, the wizard of balance, but he made it once again from the start where it counted, and when he made it to that first bend, there was no looking back for Joe Screen, Peter.
That's right, that's one of the rare occasions where Joe's made a good start. You can see there in the white helmet, he's clear of the others when he gets to the first bend, and some nice grip round that corner, and he gets a lovely first turn, and he's gone. He's left all the others. I know he's really enjoying this now, but it's really all down to now what Gary Havelock can do over Andy Smith in the later race.
So, heat 18 now, and Paul Hurry is desperately keen to qualify, but I don't think even a heat victory here, which would take him on to 7 points, would be enough for the young man from Marina Essex to make it to the overseas final. In red on the inside, that's Paul Hurry. In blue is Dean Barker with 9 points to his name so far. The Eastbourne and England international could be on his way to qualifying for the overseas final, and he may, with a heat victory here, even get a place on the rostrum. Martin Dugard is the Eastbourne captain, sponsored by Hyundai, among all the other classics all over his leathers here. Martin Dugard, his father runs a big machine tool business, and he's the Eastbourne captain. He's in gate 3, and Ben Howes on the outside. A disappointing afternoon for the youngster from Ipswich. The tapes go up, away we go from the inside, and it's Barker in front. Dugard is chasing him round the outside, but coming through to go in his trail is Martin Dugard ahead of Paul Hurry, and at the back now is Ben Howe, for whom the afternoon has hardly been a repeat of his success in the British Junior Championship at Ipswich earlier in the week. It's Dean Barker in blue, Martin Dugard in white, and now both of these, with these points totals, will surely qualify for the overseas final, and that's the next stage of their chase for a place in next year's Grand Prix. Dean Barker from Martin Dugard. Dugard leaving space for Barker, almost waving to him as he goes away. The two are brothers-in-law. Dean Barker is married to Martin Dugard's sister. Martin Dugard, recently a father, but here they'll be celebrating that both go on to Coventry here again on June the 11th for that overseas final. Dean Barker is going to win this and take the checkered flag in the blue helmet colour ahead of Martin Dugard looking back. Ben Howes in third place. Bringing up the rear in red is Paul Hurry. But that was a battle for qualification places, and both Dean Barker and Martin Dugard should be back here at Coventry for that overseas final. From behind them at the start, we can see that it was Barker and Dugard that made it away there. Certainly when they sorted out at the end of the first bend, those two in front, Peter.
Yeah, Barker and Dugard have been very, very consistent today, haven't they, really? They've sort of gone through the meeting, regularly scoring points, and they've qualified, the pair of them, without a great deal of effort. And it's a nice way to actually go through a meeting, that, really. So I'm sure that they're going to be happy going on to the next stage.
Well, certainly it was almost team riding here from the Eastbourne pair. And talk about keeping it in the family. Both will be on their way to the overseas final. No threat as we go into the last lap with Dean Barker. No threat posed by Martin Dugard, and frankly no threat to Martin Dugard in second place either. So there we are, the two of them going through, and Barker taking him on to 12 points, surely qualifying ahead of Martin Dugard on 11, and that 12 might just earn Dean Barker a place on the rostrum. So a decisive peak here, and here is the man in yellow, Andy Smith from Coventry, who goes from the outside, the 28-year-old for whom a heat victory here would give him the British title for the third year in a row. Andy Smith has the crowd behind him, and he's going from the outside gate. In the blue helmet colours is Gary Stead with just 5 points so far, but the man on the inside is the one that surely poses a threat here. If Gary Havelock can take this in red, Gary going from the inside, if he were to beat Andy Smith into second place, there'd be a ride-off with Joe Screen for the British title. But Gary Havelock has won 3 of his 4 rides, finished last in the other. He has the speed, that's Gary Havelock. The other rider in the white helmet colours is Ray Morton. But here we go, this is heat 19. Who makes it to the first bend? Havelock's away, Smith's away. Havelock takes him wide. Smith goes round the outside, holds on the speed and picks it up, and Havelock's got a lot of work to do here because Andy Smith, the Coventry rider, is in front. 1 lap has gone out of the 4 that can take him to a hat-trick of British titles. Andy Smith from Gary Havelock, from Gary Stead, and at the back Ray Morton. But Andy Smith here, barring a mistake, is surely set for the British crowd. With 2 laps to go, Andy Smith's in front of Gary Havelock, the former world champion. Can Havelock pick up the speed? He does. There's just a bike length between the two. A lap and a half to go as Andy Smith, the 28-year-old Coventry rider, this is 11th British final with a lap to go to make his victory number 3 in a row. Andy Smith ahead of Gary Havelock. Trailing back is Gary Stead. Right at the back is Ray Morton. But here comes the British champion for 1995, Andy Smith, the Craig Smith salute, the title for the 3rd year in a row. A record for Andy Smith from Coventry, ahead of Gary Havelock. And in 3rd place, Gary Stead. But there we are. What an achievement. What a ride. Clenched fist into the air. Andy Smith, the British champion for the 3rd year in a row. Alongside me, Peter Collins, who know what it's like to be British champion, but to do it 3 times in a row, Peter, that's something special for Andy Smith.
Well, absolutely, Tony. I only ever won it once, and it took me a long time before I did, and for Andy to do it 3 times on the run, I mean, that is unbelievable. I mean, in the history of our sport, we've never had this up until now. Andy's had some terrible injuries through his career, and he's always seemed to bounce back, and this is just the crowning point, really. Absolutely brilliant for Andy. Fantastic.
Well, I don't think many people will begrudge the charming young fella his title here. Perhaps not so young at 28, but a record for Andy Smith in yellow and black. He's going to get the bumps from his mechanics, from his teammates. What an achievement. What a day for Andy Smith. Gary Havelock tried, perhaps, on behalf of his clubmate Joe Screen to earn him something. But let's see how he won it, because he did win it. He won it in style. He's won 5 times here this afternoon, and this one, from the tape, was no exception with Peter Collins.
Yeah, I think it's nice to get the outside gate, actually, in the very latter part of the meeting, especially for Andy in this race. Havelock's pinned there on the inside in the red, and Andy's got a nice start. He makes a great first corner, makes no mistakes whatsoever. And with his speed, I don't think there's any way that Havelock was going to catch him, and that proved during the race.
Peter, when you see Gary Havelock there, how could he have got past him in any way?
Well, he tried absolutely everything, didn't he, really? He tried to go inside and outside. He tried as much as he could, and then he realised Andy was just pulling away. Andy just had a perfect line, riding in the right spot every place on the track, and never made a single mistake. And when Andy's in that sort of mood, there's no stopping him.
He even had time to look back there, but how vitally important was it, the close knowledge of racing on this track every week?
Well, it certainly helps, there's no doubt about that, but you've still got to get on the bike and go out there and do it, and a lot of people would crack under that pressure, but Andy seems to be making a habit of this, and today again, as the last 2 years, he's been absolutely brilliant. You can't take anything away from the lad.
5 wins out of 5 here at Brandon then. 3 wins in a row in successive seasons for the 28-year-old. As he goes into the last lap here with Gary Havelock in his wake, there was little doubt here that he was going to win this, having time once again to look back. And whatever Gary Havelock tried to do, he could make no impact whatsoever on a young man who, like Peter Collins perhaps, used to ride for Bellevue, but now a Coventry rider, and I've won the British title, he says. He knows it.
Andy, that's Speedway history.
Yeah, the dream come true. Brilliant, I feel fantastic. This must be better than winning it the first time for sure.
Did you feel any pressure going into it at all?
Yeah, all day.
And what now?
Oh, feel good, yeah.
You flying to the lads?
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to fill that trophy up and I can drink out of it.
Congratulations.
Cheers.
Heat to number 20, though, something of an anticlimax. But Chris Louis, of course, has a chance, perhaps, of challenging for at least 4th place here. He has 8 points so far. Chris Louis in white, and he's going from gate number 3. But it doesn't worry him, qualification, because he's already through to the Grand Prix this year. He rides in Poland in 3 weeks' time. That's Chris Louis in white. A Jawa Works rider, and Jawa machinery certainly reliable for him. On the inside in red is Neil Collins. Just 4 points to his name so far. The blue helmet colours are worn by David Walsh with 3 this afternoon to date. And Scott Robson on the outside in yellow and black also has 3. Chris Louis should win this P20. Here they go, and straight away Chris Louis goes to the first bend first, and surely he's going to hold it. Going round the outside is Scott Robson, but back in 2nd place David Walsh. In red going wide as Neil Collins recovered from his crash in his previous race. But Chris Louis certainly seems to have plenty in hand here, and a heat victory here would take him on to 11 points for the share of 4th place. But it isn't going to change the destiny of who reaches the rostrum to get those awards. Chris Louis with 2 laps gone in front of Neil Collins. Back in 3rd place is David Walsh as the dust starts to rise from the track. But Chris Louis here is in charge, in control. The wheels are in line. He's coming out of the bend as fast as he needs to with a lap to go for Chris Louis. The man who made the rostrum in Rocklab, or in Pocking rather, 2 years ago, is certainly not going to make the rostrum here, but he has the Grand Prix to look forward to this year, and if he does well, he'll be in the Grand Prix again next year. He takes the checkered flag there. Chris Louis from Ipswich ahead of Neil Collins in the red helmet colours, and back in 3rd place was David Walsh. But Chris Louis made this all the way from the tapes. Really, Peter Collins, there was no threat to him at any stage.
No, he's had a very consistent meeting, Chris, and